Hey there, this is Bill. This is a time-lapse of my garage renovation I did last year. You might be thinking about renovating your garage or basement or something, and hopefully this gives you a really good idea of how much work it's going to take and maybe gives you some ideas. I would love it if this series could help encourage people to do something similar. This is part 3, where I put up drywall. The first panel I have trouble with, because I found out that the stud that I want to have the panels meet at isn't plumb. It's off by ½ an inch over the width of the panel, so I have to trim the drywall to compensate, and then, of course, I have to do the same thing on the next panel. And of course that distracts me, so I make another screw up. I forget to cut out the opening for the power outlet, so off the panel comes and back up again. For the lower sheets, I use a few 1/4 inch wood shims to leave a gap between the floor and the drywall. If the drywall sits directly on the concrete, it can wick up moisture from it. Also, in a garage, when you have rain and snow, it will drip off of your car, and you don't want the drywall to be sitting in that. You might notice on the left side of this wall, on the studs, there are some shims. Those are there because the rest of the wall that we're not taking the drywall off of has ½ inch plywood behind it. So these shims keep the new drywall even with the existing stuff. I shimmed out 2 extra studs with 1/4 inch and then 1/8 inch shims so that that difference of ½ an inch isn't noticeable over a span of about 4 feet. It worked really well. You cannot tell it at all. Doing upper sheets alone is tricky. What I've done is screw in a 2x4 where the bottom of the sheet is going to sit. I can get it up there and then screw it into place. On the first one, I didn't leave myself enough of a gap, but I found it worked well to give myself an extra 1/4 inch, and then I used shims or a little pry bar to bring the drywall tight to the ceiling and screw it into place. Here's the first piece going up around the garage door. My next video will go over the removal of the old opener and installation of a new one. One thing to note here is that I'm putting silicone caulking around the edges of the garage door opening, and the reason for that is to prevent wind from coming in through the garage door and sneaking its way behind the drywall. Keeping with the theme in this renovation, these walls are 9 foot tall, and drywall sheets usually come in 4 foot by 8 foot sheets. I figured I would use the same pattern that the walls had before, with a 4 foot panel on top and a 4 foot panel on the bottom, and then a 1 foot filler piece in between. What's nice is that this keeps the hard mudding all at a comfortable height. But the way drywall sheets are made is that they're tapered at the edges. But when you cut down a 1 foot slice, it has one tapered edge and one non-tapered edge. And this makes the mudding really, really difficult. You have to fill in that gap completely with mud, and it's really hard to make it look smooth. The thing is, they actually do make 4.5 foot wide sheets of drywall, and they also make 9 foot long sheets of drywall. So either one of those would have been absolutely perfect. But I tried and I tried, and I went to every local home store that I could find, and I couldn't get any of them. So the end result is, yeah, having that 1 foot slice in the middle. I'm using 5/8 inch fire rated drywall, 4 foot by 8 foot sheets. Each one weighs around 75 pounds. That is quite heavy to be maneuvering up 5 feet in the air. In total, this took about 10 hours, and the cost of drywall and screws was around $400. Not too bad. You might notice that I'm only putting in a handful of screws into each sheet. Eventually I go back with the drywall square and I make pencil lines for each stud. Then I go through and put in a screw about every foot on each stud. I picked up a special drywall bit and it automatically sinks the head of the drywall like the correct amount so that you can mud over it easily. But I found that it doesn't really work well near the ceilings, so for those areas I would just use a regular bit. What I'm doing here is prepping all of the drywall for the area near my water heater. I wanted to have the water shut off for as little amount of time as possible, so I waited as long as I could. Then I pulled the water heater, air sealed behind it, drywalled it, mudded it, and put the water heater back. And I did that all in just a few hours. Going into this, I was pretty intimidated to cut the large pieces of drywall, but I found out that it really isn't that hard. If you just use a really sharp razor blade on the front side, you press really hard, maybe make a few passes, then you lift up the drywall and give it a solid hit from the back, or lay the cut edge off of something and then push down on it. It will split the drywall, and then you can use a razor blade on the back side to cut through the paper and finish it off. A really helpful tool was my oscillating multi-tool. They make quick work of cutting through drywall. Even if it's really close to the edge, it's very easy to use. Highly recommend one. I also use just a regular drywall saw from Harbor Freight. In the next video, I will go over replacing the garage door opener. And in the next few episodes after that, you'll see me tape and mud the joints, paint and finish, and put in jaw-dropping lighting. If that sounds good to you, and you made it this far, I hope you'll subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.